On today's episode, we have some exciting brand new gear that's being announced from Shimano. We talk flukes with past MLF Angler of the Year Matt Becker. We debate the merits of round bend versus EWG worm hooks. And we answer your questions about budget rods, beginner electronics, our favorite glide baits, and more in this week's mailbag. A very gear-heavy episode of the Tackle Talk podcast starts right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk podcast. I am excited to finally be able to say that the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you by the Rod Locker. This has been months in the making, but Brian and Chad's brand new tackle shop, the Rod Locker, is officially open for business. And I can confirm this because I placed my first order as a customer yesterday. So for those of you that are near Evansville, Indiana, the Rod Locker's brick and mortar store is open and ready to go. Their beautiful showroom is open to the public, but for folks like us, the website is officially up and running. So you can head over to www.therodlocker.com and you will see the brand new website and something I know you will all be pumped for, the return of an incredible used gear selection. And if you go look at it right now, they have a pretty mind-blowing selection up on the website for the debut and the opening of the Rod Locker. So for example, just scrolling through really fast, let's go with like entry-level casting reels. Right now, they have a Daiwa Fuego CT casting reel, right-handed, 8-to-1 gear ratio, on sale for $49. Lightly used Daiwa Fuego, $49. They also have a used Daiwa Mag Force for $19. They have a 13 Fishing Concept Z for $39 and so much more. And that's just 3 examples of entry-level reels. They have hundreds of reels, hundreds of rods right now. It's the best selection that I think I've ever seen from Brian and his crew in terms of volume and quality. So go check them out. We've been waiting for this for a few months now after ALF went out of business. Brian and Chad have picked up that torch. They've started their own tackle shop. And I got to tell you guys, after our episode in December with Brian, giving you all like an official update, we got a flood of messages from you all saying how you enjoyed that episode. And after hearing Brian talk so openly and genuinely about everything that was going on, we got a ton of messages that said something along the lines of, hey, I can't wait to support these guys. Well, folks, the time is finally here. So you can head over to www.therodlocker.com for all of your favorite brands of new gear. They have an incredible used gear selection right now, the best service you will find, the best people, great pricing, fast shipping, and you guys know that I would not leave you hanging without a discount. So the Rod Locker has given us the discount code that we will use moving forward, and it's going to follow like a pattern. So it's not the same code all the time, but I wanted to make it easy to remember. So from now on, our code over at therodlocker.com is going to be pretty simple. It's Tackle Talk, all one word, and then the month that you're buying that gear in. So right now, your code would be Tackle Talk January. All one word, Tackle Talk January. That gets you 5% off your entire order. It's sales stackable, no sales exceptions. It's awesome. So no matter what you're buying, use code Tackle Talk January, all one word. And the next month, it will be Tackle Talk February, Tackle Talk March, Tackle Talk April. That way, even if you didn't listen to that week's episode, you still know what code to use. It's not like, oh, guys, you know, this week our code is Tackle Talk 823475931. That gets really confusing. I see some other websites kind of do that, and it always is just like, what was that code again? I cannot remember that. So we're going to make it very simple. Your code is Tackle Talk January, all one word, for 5% off over at therodlocker.com. All right, everybody, before we get into today's episode here, just a very quick PSA. Again, I want to make sure that everybody, even if maybe you missed, last week's episode or this week's episode or next week's episode, I want to make sure everybody knows that the National Fishing Expo's Columbus show is quickly approaching January 30th through February 1st. And thank you to everybody that wrote in last week and corrected me and pointed out that last week I said June 30th through February 1st, which would certainly be the longest expo in the history of fishing expos. That would be like, a 7-month long fishing show from June to February? No, it is January 30th through February 1st in Columbus, Ohio. You can go to nationalfishingexpos.com to see all the details. And I have been told, I don't have it yet, but I've been told that we are going to get a discount code for you guys to use on tickets. So you might want to hang tight for another week or so until I get that coupon code. But I have been told that we are going to get some sort of code to help save you guys some money on entry fees into the Fishing Expo. So that's great news too. You just might have to wait a week, but it is definitely worth checking out. I will be there all 3 days. Over those 3 days, you will get to see James Watson. I know he will be there. Drew Gregory will be there. Fat Cat, MLF's Cole Floyd will be there. Crappie legend Russ Bailey, some of your local favorites like our buddy Ty Berger from Bass Fishing HQ. You got Troy Becker, who is the Saw Guy Whisperer around these parts, and a ton more. And we'll all be doing seminars. I know the schedule was mostly released at this point, so it looks like we are going to be doing our first seminar Friday at 4 p.m. on Stage B, and then Saturday at 2 p.m. on Stage B as well. So at least our first two that we've announced, super easy to find. We're in the far back right corner. When you walk in, straight back all the way to the right. If you came to our big seminar last year, it's in that exact same location. Far back right is Stage B, so that's going to be Friday at 4 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m. I still haven't heard word on if we're doing one Sunday or not, but I know for sure Friday at 4, Saturday at 2. We'll also have our own booth where you can come out. We are going to have a ton of gear for sale, kind of like a bass fishing yard sale of sorts. I've got everything from lithium batteries, a whole kit that you can use to make your own lures. I've got a flow bed in there, powder paint, unpainted jig heads, a brush jig mold. So whoever gets that will be off to the races making their own jigs. I have got baits galore, a ton of brand new stuff still in the box, never opened, big brand names like Berkeley, Z-Man. I've got a ton of Jig Masters stuff, all kinds of things in those bargain bins, a ton of soft plastics, flipping jigs, football jigs, hard baits, you name it. I've been working on somewhat organizing all of that stuff at least, so it's pretty easy to sift through and find the deals. But I mean, we've got like baits that retail for $10 to $12 at some silly prices. So I don't know how long those will last. I will do my best to bring enough so that a ton of people have a chance at some great gear, but I'll also have a couple rods, a couple reels, and of course some shirts, some decals. I found a few coffee mugs left that I didn't know we still had, wristbands. We'll be hanging out, taking pictures, talking fishing, and just having a great time that whole weekend. So again, that is the National Fishing Expo's Columbus show. That is January 30th through February 1st in Columbus, Ohio. I will see you all there. All right, next up here, we are a mere 13 days, I think, into the new year, and we're already getting some big 2026 new product teasers and announcements from some of the biggest names in fishing. So I want to spotlight two today, really one, and then we'll briefly mention another one because I just don't have a ton of info on it yet. But the one we're going to talk about for a little bit today is Shimano, and then we'll really briefly hit on an update from Lowrance as well. But Shimano is our big one today. So Shimano just unveiled their 2026 new product releases online a few days ago, and I guess I would say they're okay. They're not something that I'm like jumping out of my seat excited for. There is one item, kind of a sneaky item that they announced that I'm keeping my eye on. But I will be honest, if this is all we're getting in 2026 and they don't unveil some sort of like surprise items ahead of, June or July timeframe for iCast, and this is all we're going to see at iCast new from Shimano, it's a pretty depressing lineup here. Now, there's always a good chance that they could have something still up their sleeve, and they are going to unveil something, one or two pieces of new gear at iCast. We can hope, because this product lineup that they dropped on us a few days ago is kind of underwhelming. But let's hit the things here in this release that I think you guys will actually care about, because there's a lot in there that we're just not going to worry about. But one of the biggest things, to me anyway, is the new Zodius rods, and they're calling this the Zodius B. Now, the old Zodius rods are those black rods with red accents, the sleek kind of black and red monocoque handles, the rods that are just kind of a step right below the X Pride. And I have owned a couple of these before. I have one sitting right to my right, actually, in the room I'm recording in now. And it was never my favorite rod, I'll be honest. I wanted to like it so bad because it looks awesome. It's a very modern kind of sports car type look to it and feel to it. But it just always felt like it was lacking something in the beans department, I guess, right? The backbone of that rod. Those rods always felt a bit mushy to me compared to something like the X Pride that had a little bit crispier of a backbone and a strength to it. just kind of left something to be desired, I think, in those Zodius rods, at least for me. But Shimano is now unveiling the Zodius B, which, if I'm honest, just kind of looks like an all-black Zodius from before. Now, this is where I get frustrated with Shimano, because Shimano's website drives me nuts. It drives me up a wall. The tables with all of the models are super hard to read, and you can't look at all of the models at once because it doesn't show them all, and you have to like scroll down. Even if you like expand your window, you can't see all the models. And then when you do look at the models, it doesn't even list the power or the action of the models, like the two most important things. It'll list like the lure weight, the model number, things like that, but it does not list if it is like a medium heavy, a medium, a heavy, a light, anything like that. And it doesn't list fast, moderate, none of that. You have to look at the model number and try and decipher it for yourself. Just put the info on there that we want when we're looking at gear on your website, Shimano, please. It's one of my biggest gripes about Shimano. But for someone that loves to dive deep and compare rods and reels and, loves to try and do their research when new gear is announced, Shimano's website might be the worst in the business in terms of trying to do that. And I love their gear, but gosh darn it, if you are listening to this, if you know someone at Shimano, fix your website. But as I comb through the release on the Zodius, it actually looks like they didn't change much. It looks like it's mostly cosmetic. They have that same Spiral X blank, the same reel seat, the same guide train, the same handles, the same everything it looks like, except for one little mention of what they call a refined blank, whatever that means. That is a very vague thing to put in this description. That's the only thing I can see that maybe they changed, is a quote-unquote refined blank. But other than that, they also have 11 new models, which is probably your biggest change here. It looks like they're adding 5 spinning and 6 casting models. But if I read the chart, which is obviously confusing to read, it looks like most of them are specialized, like they're adding BFS rods, swim bait rods, mid-strolling rods, things like that. No like real cool unicorn rods in the middle of the spectrum. That's just a really interesting, taper or action or something. It looks like it's all specialized stuff. And then from what I can find, the price looks like it's holding fairly similar to where they were in the past of the old MSRP of the Zodius. I think most regular models are somewhere around $269 to $279, that range. But we just got smacked with a huge price increase on the Daiwa side, and it would not surprise me if Shimano pulls a, here's the price when we announced all this new gear to get everybody excited, and then when it comes time to finally buy that gear, oopsies, it's actually $289 or $299. Since the X Pride now is all the way up to $329, which makes me sick, by the way, it would not surprise me if you see a small increase to the Zodiuses when they actually hit a store near you. But that's the new-ish Zodius, new color at least. It's all black and it doesn't have those red accents anymore, but the Zodius B apparently is coming. We're also getting a new Vanquish C spinning reel, but one quick look at the price tag tells me that I don't really care that much about this release, and I'm guessing most of you don't either, because the Vanquish C spinning reel comes in at a hefty $530 MSRP. Now, it's a very stupid light feeling reel. I've played with them before briefly at some of the trade shows, and this is really for you guys and gals out there that have some insanely light rod that you paid a ton for and you want a reel that balances well and does that rod justice, then people start looking in this direction. But it's got a laundry list of features that I won't go over. It should have a laundry list of features for a $530 spinning reel, but just realistically out of our price range. And then we get the new Shimano Tranx 400 size, which follows suit of the 300 size from last year, I believe, where it got the updated body, the updated side plate. It's got better gearing inside with that, what they call that micro module gearing. Basically, I just think it's more teeth because the teeth are smaller, so you fit more around the circumference of those gears, and then it makes it smoother feeling than the old Tranx models. But the big thing there, too, is you also get the braking now accessible from the outside of the reel without having to pop off that side plate, which is really nice for adjusting brakes quickly on the fly. But at the 400 size, realistically, this only applies to you big swim bait guys and gals, you big, maybe deep diving crankbaits, like big giant deep cranks, but even that's a stretch probably. And then, of course, you pike and muskie anglers. The Tranx 300 and the Tranx 400 are two of the most iconic muskie reels out there. And now the 400 size, your bigger size of the two, is getting the facelift that we saw coming down the pike for a while now. And then we get to one of the last things anyway that we're going to care about here today, and that's the Shimano Neck Save spinning reel. We are getting a new version of the Neck Save, and in true recent Shimano fashion, I hate to say it because I feel like I'm dogging them an awful lot so far, but they took a pretty solid looking reel and made it uglier again. And the first casualty of this kind was last year, the Shimano Nasky. Last year, they took my favorite $99 spinning reel on the planet, a crisp, clean, smooth, all silver, under $100 reel that performs like a champ, and they jacked the price up like 25%, and they made it ugly as sin. It went from a classy looking all silver reel that you could pair with anything to a muted gray blue body with a burnt orange copper bail. Just an ugly reel that looks way worse and costs $25 more than its predecessor. And now, look what they did to the Shimano Neck Save.
Look how they mess with my boy.
A very budget-friendly reel that was all black with blue accents. It matched that sort of Shimano color scheme, kind of like an SLX or something along those lines, and they were $59. And for a reel under $60, they are a darn good reel. I don't care what anybody says about them. But now they snuck us a little 5% price increase, and they turned it also into this black reel with a burnt orange bail and accents. I don't know why it bugs me so much, but gosh darn it, stop cramming burnt orange down our throats, Shimano. We don't want it. Now, this doesn't look nearly as bad as the Nasky, I don't think, but it is still a complete 180 from what the old Shimano Neck Save looked like. And the only difference I can find now is that it includes silent drive, which I don't think the old Neck Save had. I could be wrong, but basically silent drive, I think, means that it's tighter inside there, and supposedly there's less room for, things and gearing to move, and it makes it feel smoother. I don't know what it is, but I feel like sometimes some of these reel companies and their technologies, quote unquote, are just things that are like, well, yeah, I would like my pinion gears and my worm shaft and my other gears to fit tightly with minimal spacing. That's a given. I don't know why we need a technology name for that. That just seems like something that I really would like in the build of my reels. And again, I say that fully as a guy that just likes to fish. I am no engineer by any means, so there could be a whole lot more that goes into that. But sometimes I think these technologies that they pass down to gear over the years just seem anyway like more of a marketing ploy to justify hitting us with some small price increase than anything else. So I don't know. Silent drive, I guess, is in the new Neck Save. The Neck Save went up in price a little bit, and it looks uglier. And then the last thing is the thing that I think I am ironically most interested in, and that's the new Shimano Cellus rods, Cellus, both spinning and casting. The Cellus B is coming to us very soon. Now, there are Shimano Celluses out there right now. The regular Cellus, those are all blue, foam handle, very inexpensive $49 rods out there, but they've never really been a giant deal for most people. I feel like they are rods that sometimes I will see at fishing expos that people will run like stupid deals on, kind of like some of the lower end Daiwa rods too, where you can go to a fishing expo and you pick up like, 2 for $60 or 2 for $70 of some rod from a brand that you've heard of like Shimano, but a model of rod like a Cellus that you may not have heard of. And like I said, this has never been really a giant deal of a rod, but this year I think that might change because these rods are one of the few exceptions where I'm not really mad at a giant price increase because it looks like Shimano is trying to take this from a very, very, very entry level, almost starter or younger angler rod and trying to turn it into a tournament ready rod while staying under $80. So the new Cellus looks nothing like the old Cellus. The old Cellus was full blue all up and down the rod. That is all gone. The foam handles are gone for the most part. This is now an all black, silver writing, cork handle EVA butt rod, very similar to the looks of something like a Dobbins Fury, for instance, without the green accents on the Fury. That's kind of what this is starting to look like. But this rod now comes in at $79.99 MSRP. So that's a pretty big jump. That's a $30 jump from what it was before, but they are going to have 4 spinning rods, 3 casting models. It's got a reinforced lower blank with diagonal carbon wraps. It's got a hybrid cork handle. It looks like a very serviceable rod at the price point. And those models that they're coming out with, those 7 models, are no nonsense, everyday models. Every single rod in this lineup is going to be 7 foot in length, no exceptions it looks like, and every one of these rods is going to have a fast action, so they've got no sort of moderate or anything cute in there. 7 foot, fast action. All that's going to change is the power of that rod. So in the casting rods, they're going to have a 7 foot medium fast, a 7 foot medium heavy fast, and a 7 foot heavy fast. And then in the spinning rods, they're going to have a 7 foot medium light, they're going to have a 7 foot medium, a 7 foot medium 2-piece, and then a 7 foot medium heavy. Cover all the bases, straight down the middle, no playing around. At $79, I'll be keeping an eye on those because at least from the pictures, it looks like this is a rod that got a giant upgrade at a pretty nominal $30 price bump. So it's still coming in at under $80, which is so hard to do these days. So the Shimano Celis, ironically, is the newest Shimano product that I will probably be watching because I think it has the most impact and the most appeal to people like me, and I'm assuming the people that listen to Tackle Talk. So other than that, Shimano's releases don't really affect us too much. The new Compre, I think I said that right, it's like COMPRE, reels are coming out, and those are a lot more on the multi-species side. So they have some trolling reels and reels for trout and all that kind of stuff. The new Stella SWD, which is a saltwater reel, so we don't care too much about that. It also costs about as much as a used car, so I really don't care about it. We have another saltwater jigging reel, and then some other things, again, that just don't apply to us here on Tackle Talk. But that is your quick rundown of the new major announcement from this past week, Shimano's 2026 new releases. Other than that, we also had some announcements from Lowrance coming out that they are coming out with Active Target 2. So Active Target is Lowrance's live sonar. So that's similar to, like Live Scope with Garmin or Mega Live 2 with Humminbird. And I've seen some big claims come from the announcements about Active Target 2, but I'll be honest, I haven't had enough time to dive in and fully understand it all yet. So we will probably have to do that in the future. But I heard some crazy things, like you can get 180 degrees of cone out of that new transducer, and then supposedly you can pair two of them together and you get a 360 degree live beam. Again, I don't know how all that stuff works. I could be way off, but that's just what I heard in the very small bit of info that I was able to soak in this past week. But I do think I probably need to do a little bit more research on those. So I stuck in my lane this week, and I really wanted to hit Shimano for you all because I think those rods and reels probably impact us a little more. We'll do a deep dive on the Active Target 2 coming up sometime soon. All right, everybody, next up here, let's jump into this week's Tackle Talk Pro Tip. And this week, we have a treat for you. We are lucky enough to hear from 2023 Major League Fishing Angler of the Year, our buddy, Matt Becker. And Matt was kind enough to actually send in some audio and some video for his pro tip, so I will let that roll right now.
What's up, guys? Matt Becker here for another Tackle Talk tip. Today, we're diving into soft plastic jerk baits. This is one of my favorite baits, whether we're talking about a Yamamoto D-Shad or a Super Fluke or any sort of soft plastic jerk bait. These couple rigging tips that I'm going to talk about here can drastically help you save some baits and catch some more bass when you're out on the water. And that's what I'm all about, is efficiency and making sure everything goes smoothly when you're out on the lake. So really, there's two different ways I like to rig these style baits. One is when I'm fishing around more heavy cover, whether that's grass or wood or lily pads, any sort of vegetation where you want a weedless presentation, you want a weedless hook. I'm going to throw it on this hook right here. So this is the Trocar TK105. This is the 3/0 size. I like the 3/0 or the 4/0. Really, I think you get a little better action with the 3/0, so I'm going with this one right here. But this is going to be for more of my Texas posing, Texas rig style, weightless, soft plastic jerkbait fishing. I like the round bend style hook over an EWG. I would say, a lot of guys like to use an EWG, but I feel like you get a better hookup ratio and it comes through grass and heavy cover better with the round bend. So that's why I'm choosing this hook right here. But certain situations when you want to add a little weight to the bait, make it a little heavier, and actually create a super unique action, totally different action, I like to rig it on a Core Tackle Scamper rig. So this is a weighted straight shank hook, and you're going to thread the bait on there and leave this hook exposed. You can see the rigging method here on the back of the package. So you're going to thread this hook onto or into your fluke or your D-shad or whatever soft plastic jerkbait. And this little bit of weight inside there actually creates a vibration in the tail. It makes the tail kick. It makes the bait swim very differently than a weightless presentation. So really just choosing the right hook for your soft plastic jerkbait can drastically change the action of the bait and give those fish a little bit different look. So if you want to cast a little further, or if you want a totally unique vibration action while you're pulling your bait, even on the twitch, it adds that little vibrate. But the Core Tackle Scamper Rig, awesome little rigging hack you can do to your soft plastic jerkbait fishing to help you catch a few more bass.
So there you go. There's some fluke juice from a gentleman that knows a thing or two about catching bass on the biggest stage in the sport, a past MLF champion, past Angler of the Year. And what's funny is he said something in there that will come up later in this episode when we talk about EWGs versus round bends. And that was completely unplanned. I had no idea that Matt was going to mention EWGs versus round bends in his tip today. And it works out so perfectly because here in a few minutes, you're going to hear my thoughts on which I like better in most situations. And I don't really want to give anything away here, but just remember, Matt Becker has won millions of dollars in fishing. I have won hundreds of dollars in fishing. So do with that information what you will. But it's really cool to hear that Matt prefers round bends for his flukes because he's right. I feel like a lot of people tend to lean toward EWG when it comes to a weightless fluke especially. But the part of his tip that I really want to focus on today is the second rigging method that he talked about, that Core Tackle Scamper Rig. And when I opened up his text and I heard Matt's tip for today for the first time, I was so pumped that he mentioned that specific rig because it is so slept on. And I actually bought my first couple packs of Core Tackle Scamper Rigs last year because of Matt Becker. I saw a video that Matt posted, again, this is months and months ago at this point, but he posted about these little scamper rigs for his flukes. And then I did my own research. I saw some videos of the action of this little weighted hook on a fluke, and I was sold. So I bought a few packs for myself, and since I have bought those and I've got the chance to use them quite a bit, they're just these little straight shank hooks that have this kind of 3-barbed weight running up and down the shank, and that actually gets fully buried in the fluke when you rig it, and then you run your hook out the back of that fluke, so it kind of looks like when you rig up a swim bait or a little minnow or something on a jig head. That's what it looks like. So you have that exposed hook coming out of the back of that fluke, and there's two important things there. One, you get a great hookup rate because you have that hook that's completely exposed out the back like a normal swim bait, and two, yes, you get some cool darting and fluttering actions out of it, but honest to goodness, my favorite action that I get out of this little rig is when you burn it for a long period of time and then you kill it, and then you burn it and you kill it, you burn it and you kill it, and that is my favorite way to retrieve this thing because it makes that bait kind of wiggle and shudder really fast back and forth, and it acts like a moving bait. So you get this really subtle kind of shimmy that you would normally get out of, if it was on the back of a chatterbait or, like your really fast, thin crankbaits or things like that. It's a very fast, subtle vibration. Really cool look to it. One of those things that's really hard to get out of a plain fluke without it being on the back of some sort of bladed or lipped bait. And Core Tackle makes some pretty cool stuff in general. They're an awesome small company that seems to be more focused on the terminal tackle and the jig head type baits. So they make the hover rig that you've probably heard of. They make the tush rig, the scamper rig that we just talked about, the wacky shot. If you're someone that's looking for interesting combinations of hooks and lead, Core Tackle are your type of folks. So you can go check them out if you want to look at everything from Core Tackle. But that is our tip today from the one and only Matt Becker, all about fluke rigging and how to get some different looks out of those soft jerk baits. All right, everybody. Next up here on the show, we're about to head into this week's Tackle Talk fishing poll, which we will get to in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Humminbird. No matter what you're looking for, whether it's basic 2D, down imaging, side imaging, live sonar, 360, big units, small units, ice fishing, Humminbird has you covered. With first-class technology and features like target lock, their mega line of products like Mega Live 2, Mega Down, Mega Side Imaging, Mega 360. They've got that dual spectrum chirp sonar and so much more. Humminbird really is a one-stop shop for all of your marine electronics, your graphs, and your fish finders. Big or small, simple or cutting-edge technology, see for yourself why Humminbird is simply, clearly better. To learn more, you can head over to www.humminbird.com. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you by Minn Kota. Minn Kota has a full line of legendary freshwater trolling motors, from the fan favorites, the Ultrex and the Altera, to the Tarova, to their newest option, the Kayak Tarova. Minn Kota trolling motors come equipped with some of the top features in the sport, like their one-boat network, spot lock, advanced GPS, sonar integration, and a ton more. Wherever you need to go, Minn Kota can get you there. For more information on the full line of Minn Kota trolling motors and shallow water anchors, you can visit www.minnkotamotors.com. All right, everybody, let's jump into this week's fishing poll presented by Minn Kota.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Poll. Brought to you by Minn Kota. Adventure awaits at minnkota.com.
All right, everybody, we have a fun one this week. I promised that we were going to get to a ton of gear talk in this week's episode, and we are staying true to our word. We had new gear from one of the biggest names in rods and reels. We had some Fluke talk with a past MLF Angler of the Year, and now it's time to talk about hooks. And that's because this week's fishing poll question that we asked you all was, do you prefer round bend or EWG worm hooks? And this is a question that I think has a lot more layers than it seems. Like, this is a real onion of a question. You peel back a layer, there's another layer, and then another one, and then another one. And I wanted to try my best to actually make this discussion quite the opposite. I want to simplify it. I want to tell you why I think, for me anyway, there's a clear answer here, and I think a lot of people just overthink the issue. So, EWG or round bend. Now, these are both sort of offset worm hooks in general. This is not a straight shank hook, but one of these has an extra wide gap with that hook point that lines up right in line with that top shank piece, that like bend right there by the line tie. And then the other is a thinner gap, and most of the time that hook point is sort of pointing out a little bit, and it's not parallel with that top bend completely. So what that means is with a round bend, you're actually getting that initial poke of that fish to be a little easier, it seems like. It seems like it takes less effort to get that hook to start to penetrate because of the angle of that hook point. And also, it seems like a lot of times you're getting a little bit lighter wire of a hook versus a big, beefy EWG hook. Most of the time, I feel like my EWGs are a lot thicker. And with that lighter wire round bend, that means you can usually fish it on a little bit lighter line, a little bit lighter rod, a little bit more finesse-y type tactics. So those are generally seen as positives in a lot of scenarios, but then there are some downfalls to a round bend as well. Two big ones. One is that thinner gap on that hook. So it's not an extra wide gap, which is what EWG stands for, a little bit thinner gap on those round bends. And that means that it doesn't play as nicely with really thick, beefy plastics, because your plastic hits that back wall of that hook sooner, and it doesn't leave a lot of room or clearance for that soft plastic to be pushed back and make room for that hook to kind of do its thing. So a round bend is often a really popular choice for smaller plastics like trick worms, finesse worms, even Senkos. But once you really get any thicker than like a standard Senko, I think a lot of people start to shy away from them. And that goes for creature baits and other thicker plastics too. A round bend hook is just a little bit more effective for skinnier, finessier baits. And then the other downside of a round bend is snags. You are just going to get snagged more with a round bend hook than you are with an EWG hook because of that hook point angle. Yes, you can bury that hook point, but even then, it doesn't bury as cleanly as it does on an EWG because of that angle. So you get that sort of wrinkled look to your soft plastic. You know, your worm isn't a completely straight line. It's kind of got that little bit of like a hump in the middle of it, or a hunchback sometimes. And then if you don't really like hardcore bury that hook point, any little bit of force, that hook is going to want to protrude, and then hello rocks, hello wood, hello weeds. It's definitely snag city sometimes compared to something like an EWG for me anyway. And then on the flip side, the EWG is kind of the opposite. An EWG is a very clean, very weedless option because that hook point faces 90 degrees straight up in line with that top bend of that hook. So you get to rig your worm or your creature bait or anything completely perfectly in line with that shank bend up top right there by that line tie. And then you can run that puppy over whatever you want, especially if you just gently tuck that hook point into the back of that plastic, even like skin hook it basically. And then you can run over whatever you want. Your plastic looks cleaner, it looks straighter, it can handle all of those soft plastics that other round bend didn't handle so well. Big, thick creature baits, beaver baits, swim baits, real thick worms, just about anything. The only downside, I think, to an EWG is that it takes a little bit more force to drive that hook into the fish because of that hook point angle. With a round bend, the hook kind of starts to do that work for you because it wants to poke and it wants to go ahead and catch something. With an EWG, since it's so in line, it actually takes a little bit more force to drive that hook home. So the fun part about this question is I think in the eyes of the public, I feel like we are at the part of this cycle where now it's getting cool to say, hey, here's why you shouldn't throw an EWG. I'm guessing for a long time, the round bend or the straight shank hooks were super popular. Then the EWG came around and people slowly made the switch. The tide shifted. The EWG became the popular kid on the block. And now I think enough time has passed where the videos and the opinions that get the clicks and the traffic online nowadays are the ones that go against the grain. And they actually say, hey, here's 10 reasons why you should not, all caps, throw an EWG hook. Being contrarian in this internet age that we live in always pays off. And so I think that's an easy way for you to see where most of the public probably is what are like the people that are trying to grab headlines and grab your attention, what are they saying? Because that probably means it's opposite or contrarian to what most of the public believes, or at least what they think most of the public believes. Because if I go on YouTube and I, release a video that says, hey, Senkos catch fish, that's going to do nothing. But if I release a video that says, here's 15 reasons why you should never throw a Senko ever again, that video is going to do numbers. That's just how the internet works. So I'm starting to see more and more of these, hey, here's why you shouldn't throw an EWG. And to me, that probably means, well, then most of the public probably favors the EWG. And for me, my answer is going to be the EWG. Almost always. And yes, as with any question, you can answer it with, well, the correct answer is actually, it depends. It depends on, X, Y, and Z variables. And that's definitely true. This is fishing. There is no 1000% correct answer to anything, but that wasn't the question. The question was, which do you prefer? Not which one is the right choice 100% of the time. Which one do you prefer if you had to pick? And for me, I prefer an EWG. And I prefer it simply because of its lack of downsides to me. There's definitely some upsides to a round bend, easier hook penetration, less force required, which probably means a better hookup percentage for a lot of people. But that problem of an EWG where it takes quote unquote more force to send that hook home is a fixable one to me. Because if you're getting bit on an EWG, the fish is there, you're swinging and you're missing on that fish, that is either a timing issue, which you need to fix, or it's a force issue, which you need to fix. Both of those are fixable. If you're swinging too quick or too late, work on that. It's not the hook's fault, right? And if you're not getting the hook penetration that you want, sharpen your hooks, use a stronger rod, use stronger line, or set the hook harder. And a lot of the time, it's just a force issue. And in that case, it sounds to me anyway, like you're just not giving them the beans. It sounds like you think that you're giving them the beans, but that can's only like half full. You can't do that, right? This is a big boy hook. It needs a big boy hook set sometimes. So especially around weeds or around cover, which is where an EWG shines. I mean, you wouldn't go frogging with a medium spinning rod and miss a bunch of fish and then blame it on the hooks on the frog. It's not the frog's fault. It's not the hook's fault. As anglers, sometimes we have this bad habit of blaming the gear for our shortcomings, or our decision-making, or our mechanics, our execution. Case in point, we will miss a fish and then we say it's the hook's fault. Oh, these hooks suck. Well, no, man. You actually did 4 things wrong in that series of events. You had an underpowered rod for the cover you were fishing, you had too light a line, you swung too early because you got excited, and you didn't set the hook hard enough. That's not the hook's fault. In the case of this conversation, that's not the hook shape's fault. That's a you problem, and you can fix that. This is where I don't envy fishing companies at all, because like I said, in fishing, we have this tendency to blame gear for anything that goes wrong. You don't go to, the gym to go shoot a basketball, and then every time you miss, you go, well, this ball sucks. No, it's not the ball's fault. you can control your mechanics, you can control your decision making, you can control, the physical portion of the activity that you're doing. You don't always have to blame inanimate objects in gear. I have thousands of fish pictures that would like to argue that an EWG is a pretty darn effective hook to go out and fish with. So I just think that anybody who says an EWG's downfall is that it has a bad hookup ratio because of that angle of the hook being in line with the top end is severely mistaken, because that's not the biggest weakness of an EWG. That's the beauty of the design of an EWG hook. The fact that we made a hook shape that gives you a ton of clearance for any soft plastic you want. It's virtually weedless. I mean, even without a soft plastic, because everything is completely in line, it keeps your soft plastic looking straight and amazing. It comes through cover and weeds awesome, and it performs when you want it to. On a round bend, sometimes I feel like it can sort of get caught on things when I don't want it to. The EWG is designed to hook things that I want it to hook when I give it the force to do so. So for me, the answer is EWG of the two choices. Not saying that a round bend is bad. I'm not saying that a round bend doesn't catch fish. But if I'm choosing A versus B for one that I prefer most often, it's easily an EWG hook. But enough about me. Let's see what you all said. You, the Tackle Talk listeners, you voted on this. And after calculating the results across social media from our polls, the website poll, comments, and emails, I am pulling it up now. And my goodness, this was a bloodbath. There is no way that I thought it would be this lopsided. Like, I thought this was probably going to be 60-40 maybe, one way or the other. I figured EWG probably had it, but this was an absolute beatdown. With 93% of the vote across all of the platforms, your winner is the EWG. And only 7% of you across those platforms said round bend. We had a little over 400 responses, a pretty good poll size here. 93% of you said EWG. Now, here's my shameless plug for you all. That's something silly, like 1.1% of you that listen to Tackle Talk every week. So I need your help. Go over to the website, tackletalkpodcast.com, click the menu at the top, and you're going to see a page called Fishing Poll. There, you can submit your answer to next week's question so we can bump that number up even higher. It takes half a second to submit your answer, and then you guarantee that your voice is heard on the show, and it makes the fishing poll even more fun because you know that you were a part of it. So, tackletalkpodcast.com, click fishing poll, and you can vote for next week's show. But I'm pretty shocked here. I thought EWG would win, but like I said, I thought the tide was turning a little bit to a point where the cooler answer would be round bend. But obviously, I was wrong. And again, I think it just comes down to the lack of downsides. It's more weedless, it's stronger. I think fish stay pinned better on an EWG when you hook them. I think it can accommodate more baits than a round bend can. And as long as you have the proper technique and the proper amount of force, I don't notice any meaningful difference in hookup rate from a regular Texas rigged round bend hook with the hook point tucked. So for me and an astounding 93% of you out there, EWG is your runaway winner in this week's fishing poll presented by Minn Kota. All right, next up here today, we are going to jump into this week's mailbag in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Amped Outdoors. Amped Outdoors is an industry leader in lithium batteries, engineered and built for all kinds of marine electronics and applications. They have batteries for trolling motors, graphs, live sonar, ice fishing, kayak motors, you name it. Amped has a battery to fit your needs. With Amped, you get the highest quality components, you get waterproof case designs, which is important for all of us out there in the elements. You get Bluetooth connectivity so that you never have to wonder if your battery is charging ever again. You can check when your battery is fully charged, and when you're out there on the water, you can check to see how much battery you have left. No more guessing, no more games. Just pull up your phone and check the status of your battery. And all of their 50 amp hour or larger batteries have heated charging standard, so you can safely charge your batteries in any weather condition. You get all of that plus an industry-leading 10-year, no gimmick, no questions asked warranty and world-class customer support based out of Hudson, Wisconsin. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com today to check out their full line of batteries and power your passion with Amped. All right, everybody, let's jump into this week's mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors. your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, everybody. Our first question here this week in the mailbag comes to us from Ben, and he says, "Hey, Andrew, I love the podcast. My question is about forward-facing sonar. I live in Colorado, so I'm sure you can imagine that our bass fishing sucks, and I need some help with forward-facing sonar, but I can't pay for the Lowrance unit, and I want one of those portable fish finders that you get on Amazon for $50. Do they work well enough to be better than not having anything at all? Give them the beans, Ben." Well, hey, Ben, appreciate it. Yeah, it's the problem with forward-facing sonar, man. It's expensive, like really expensive. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. That's one of the biggest gripes that people have with it, is that it's out of a lot of people's price range and it's not accessible to everybody. So that is across the board, no matter what company you go with. Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin, all of those are going to be in the thousands of dollars if you want live sonar. The cheapest out there right now is that Lowrance Eagle Eye 9, but you're making a lot of sacrifices with the tech to get the cost down to that price point for $1,000 with that transducer and with that screen. You're getting less beams, you get less of a field of view, more dead spots, but you get that $999 price tag. And then you get into like Mega Live 2 from Humminbird, Active Target from Lowrance, or Live Scope from Garmin, and now you're talking big money. But when you say that you found a portable fish finder on Amazon for $50, I don't know what you're looking at, but I'm guessing you're looking at something like a Deeper or an iBobber or something like that. And if that's the case, that's just going to give you basic 2D sonar. That's not going to give you live sonar like you see with like Live Scope, not even close. So even then, in my opinion anyway, I don't even think you get good 2D with something like a Deeper or an iBobber, one of those ones that you cast out and then you can kind of like pull it up on your phone. Those are, I think, the units that you're talking about. I would feel much more comfortable spending something like $100, $150, and then getting into a real, at least crisp 2D sonar. So if you spend like $139, you can go get something like the Humminbird Piranha Max. The 4, I think it is $139. That'll give you a really nice 2D sonar. And then if you upgrade to something like the Piranha Max DI, now you're starting to get down imaging too, which is like a way clearer picture than a normal 2D sonar. And it actually looks like a picture versus more of like a graph with just some colors on it. So bang for your buck wise, those units are awesome. I also really like the Striker 4 from Garmin. That's the first unit that I ever had, the regular 4, and then the 4 CV Vivid, very similar to the Piranha Max and the Piranha Max DI. I think the Garmin's are $10 or $20 more, but both of those series are great. I would go that route personally versus something like a Deeper or an iBobber or any of those that you cast out and it's just like a floating ball that you try to connect to your phone. I would rather have a 3 to 4 inch vertical screen, solid transducer, and still keep it under $200. All right, the next question here is from Bobby, who says, "Hey, Andrew, Bobby here from Southeast Wisconsin. This will be my first full year bass fishing with some intention behind it, and I really enjoyed this New Year's resolution episode. It really got me thinking about how I approach my fishing in 2026. I fish for fun, 3 to 4 hours at a time, a couple times a month from a feel-free lure 10. My confidence baits are a jig and a wacky rig, but I'm trying to get better with moving baits. If I'm trying to close gaps in my fishing toolbox, is it better to commit to learning one technique like a chatterbait or jerkbait and figure out when and where it shines? Or should I always focus on choosing the right bait for the conditions and letting proficiency develop over time? It kind of feels like a chicken or the egg situation. I would appreciate your thoughts." Hey, Bobby, that's a great question. I think, first off, in your question, some details there I thought were kind of cool. The Feel Free Lure 10, which is the kayak you said you had, that was my first real serious kayak after I sold my couple Ascends that I owned over the years. That Lure 10 is a great, stable 10-footer, comfy seat. I like that kayak a lot, so it's a good choice. It's also interesting that your confidence baits are a wacky rig and a jig. So you've got a good foundation to build off of, because I think a lot of times people start and they can have some success with moving baits and they have trouble with those baits that are bottom contact. You're trying to feel bites. You're really setting the hook. A lot of times with moving baits, the more kind of chuck and wind baits, I feel like usually a lot of people are kind of flip-flopped from what the situation is that you're having. So that is interesting. You have a good foundation to build off of. But when you ask if you should commit to one bait at a time and fully learn it, or just go out and fish with whatever's right for that time, and then, eventually your proficiency will come, you're not going to like my answer. but it's both. You have to do both. You can't just pick one technique to learn it and only fish that for a big extended period of time, because then you're going to miss out on actual successful fishing. And that's a whole different, confidence killer and buzz kill out there, and it's going to ruin your fun. So if you go out like 10 outings in a row and all you throw is a jerkbait, you have no confidence in a jerkbait, yes, you'll probably build a little bit of proficiency, a little bit of confidence with it over those 10 outings, but you also left so many fish on the table by just sticking with that one bait for so long. You're going to have multiple rough days in a row. You're going to get discouraged. You really need to balance out the struggle of learning a new bait with the success of baits that will work. So you still need to catch fish. You need to have fun. You need to have success. But at the same point, you can't just fish what will work and only mix in a jerkbait, maybe a cast or two every couple weeks to try it out, because then, like you said, you're not going to build that confidence. You do have to put it in your hand and force yourself to use it more and more, but you can work it into your regular fishing. Like in the New Year's resolution episode, when we say, forcing yourself to love a lure and forcing yourself to throw it, I don't mean that you have to go out with a jerkbait and only fish a jerkbait for a whole month. I mean that if you're going to go 8 hours out at a time, fish that jerkbait for 1 hour or 2 hours when you normally would fish at 0. That is forcing yourself to fish a new bait and learn to love a new bait. You just don't have to do it exclusively. Work it in 10 to 20% of the time instead of 0% of the time. Force yourself to at least throw it some. So if you're lucky enough to be one of those people that goes out, fishing 3 times a week, well, then that's 12 times a month. Maybe one of those days or 2 of those 12 days, try to commit to fishing a jerkbait hard instead of never fishing one at all. Not going out there and exclusively fishing that bait until you love it, because that's going to happen over time. Otherwise, you're going to overdo it. Like I said, you're going to kill that confidence completely or have so little success that it ruins the fun of fishing for you over that time where you try to build your proficiency with that bait. So it's kind of a wishy-washy answer, I know, but there really is a balance to it for sure. You do have to do both. I consider forcing yourself to love a lure, going out and fishing it, maybe 10 to 20% of the time when normally you have no confidence and you wouldn't fish it at all. That hour or 2 an outing really can help you over time, but you don't have to do it and overdo it so much where you just hate the time that you're out fishing because you're only throwing things that you don't have confidence in. All right, the next question is from Jason, who says, "Hey, Andrew, first, I would like to say thank you for all the amazing information and all the hard work making the best fishing show out there. But I have a question about what would be your recommendation for a 1 to 2 ounce glide bait, and do you have a personal favorite? And also, would you use a different line for an umbrella rig, or would something work for both? Thank you for all you do, Jason." That's a great question too, and one I'll try and make pretty simple. So I guess if I read that right, I think you're looking for a recommendation on 1 to 2 ounce glide baits. That's an easy one for me. If you're staying under 2.5 ounces, my number one is the KGB Swim Baits Resin Chad Shad, the real one, the one that's handmade by Kevin and his team. It's 1.9 ounces. It's $140, a premium glide bait. That's my absolute favorite. If you go down from there, one of my other favorites of all time is the Clutch Eco. It's a $95 bait, a little bit smaller, 6.25 inches, 1.75 ounces, I believe. Awesome little glide bait. It's almost indestructible. It's the one thing I love about that Eco. It's also widely available at a ton of major retailers. That's a great option. Some honorable mentions for glide baits, I would say, would be the Throwback Metro. I would put the Spro Chad Shad in there for sure. The plastic version, way cheaper, way more available. The Clutch Baby Boss is becoming one of my favorites too. And then things like the Fish Everything 7-inch Taxi Shad. There's some really great ones out there, but a big chunk of my fish lately, like in the past year or so, have came on the Resin 7-inch KGB Chad Shad, the Clutch Eco, and then that Clutch Baby Boss too. But your second question was about line choice, and line choice for umbrella rigs versus glide baits. And I'll tell you what, I use the exact same setup for both of those baits. My glide bait setup is my A-rig setup. There's no difference there. I literally take like a big decoy egg snap and I snap on my umbrella rig, snap it off, and then throw my glide baits right on it. So yes, I use the exact same line. I use 20-pound fluoro for everything in that range. It just feels right to me for most of my big glide baits. I don't have to worry about breaking off. They still cast a mile. And then same thing with an A-rig too. I like that heavier line because it'll help keep it up a little bit more too, versus if you go down to, 18 or 16 or 15, then that A-rig starts to fall even farther down. And 20-pound fluoro just feels right to me for all of my glide baits and for my A-rig that I throw in the rivers and the lakes around here. I throw a mix of Sunline Sniper and Sunline Assassin. Right now, I'm throwing a lot more Assassin because I got that silly deal on Black Friday where it was like, 40 or 50% off or something. They're both great lines, but at the end of the day, 20-pound fluoro, like you're not really going to have a breaking issue with hardly anybody with 20-pound fluoro. So I would just say, get you some 20-pound fluorocarbon, put it on that setup and forget it. It will do both. It will do your big glide baits, 2.5 ounces and under for sure. It'll also do those big Alabama rigs. All right, and our last question here is from Blake, who says, hey, Andrew, what rods would you recommend for an angler on an extreme budget? And then in parentheses, it says less than $80. I love fishing, but I only have $20 to $50 extra a month to spend on fishing. Do you have any tips? Blake, yes, I do. I would say for $80 and under, it's definitely a tough price point these days. It sucks because when I first started fishing, there was a lot of sub $100 gear out there, and now the choices are getting smaller and smaller, and what you can find under $100, a lot of times the quality has gone way down. That's why I'm so excited to keep my eye out for that Shimano Celis that we talked about earlier, because that's going to be in your price range. So I would keep my eye on that revamp moving forward. But my choice right now for sure would be the Daiwa Aired X rods. AIRD-X, I think is how they're spelled. Daiwa Aired. Those are really, really nice rods for like $60. If you want some other options, the Abu Garcia Vendettas, I think I saw the other day, are on sale over on the Abu Garcia website. They had some models marked down to like $63. Those are normally $90 rods, a very good rod at that $63 price point on sale for sure. But I mean, under $80 is going to be hard because even the Dobbins Colt or something like that are now, I think, $89 after the price increases. So I guess my answer would probably be the Daiwa Aired or Aired X, whatever you can find around you. I think those are going to be tough to beat, and you're going to have a hard time finding a better rod at under $59. All right, everybody, that is today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all a ton. As always, you can find us on the website, tackletalkpodcast.com. There you can submit your own mailbag question to be heard on an upcoming episode. You can also vote in the Tackle Talk fishing poll for next week's episode. Mark your calendars. The Columbus Fishing Expo is quickly approaching, June 30th through February 1st in Columbus, Ohio. I will be there. We will be hanging out all 3 days. We have that seminar Friday at 4 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m., both at Stage B in the back right corner of the convention hall. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook at Tackle Talk Podcast. You can email us, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.